Right. Came a little bit early. I think about 1 minute early. But I guess will be fine. I'm just going to start. Okay. So welcome to the digital transformation. And this is the second episode. And today we're going to talk about how to engage your consumer base with WisePass. So a month ago, what we did was just to kickstart a new series where we didn't talk too much about brands and then how they could leverage our platform just to acquire the consumers, engage them, promote to them, or reward them. And this is the purpose of this series. We will focus today on engagement, and we will work on making sure we can get some very simple cases, and we'll have a big part for the concept and a big part for the workshop. So without further ado, let me kickstart the presentation today. So let's do that. Duration. There we go. So that is today the focus of the webinar. So we left last month in the end, in the middle of last month, on one thing. So we were really working on one big case where how to get and acquire new consumers, especially consumers that would be relevant to your brand. And the way we did it was pretty simple. The brands would have actually a set of products or services that they would feed in the system. And then with those products and services available to our subscribers, then the subscribers will come to the venues and then would actually redeem the product or the service. And this is basically how brands acquire consumers. So it's not just about getting the email, it's about building up a whole entire supply chain and use the data, tag them, enrich the data, process the data, and so they can actually have a really clear consumer base they can leverage in the future. That was actually the first brick for us. So today we're going to talk about, now that I have a consumer base, and let's assume we have 1,000 consumers, or even more than that. The question next is, how are we going to engage those consumers? So now let's move to the next. Right, I can just do that. Yeah, okay. So as usual, our webinar is split into two parts. We broke it with the concept in the first step, and eventually we'll use a workshop. So you can get a few definitions, a few concepts that you'll need just to understand the engagement. And then after that, we'll just get a concrete case. So if you had to do some engagement campaigns, we can actually just show you from A to Z. Okay. So let's talk about concept. So last month, what we did was really simple. We discussed about, well, what is digital transformation? So I just put a sentence here where we see digital transformation for brands is a way for us just to reach the audience through digital platforms and build an ongoing relationship with the consumers. At the end of the day, branding is still the branding purpose is actually the same. It's really about sending the message to your consumers so they can get it. And the only main change I would say we do is instead of actually maybe using traditional methods of using those tools just to reach those consumers, then you're gonna reach more. You're gonna use more digital platforms. So as an example is actually billboards might be used in the past more, and or TV advertising or print, right, or magazines. That's great, and those were ways just to use the your marketing budget just to reach your consumers and make sure you can build up the brand. The thing is, as consumers are shifting their eyeballs on other platforms, it is necessary for the brands just to shift to the right platform so they can still send the message to the right target audience. So what we do with WisePass is actually just to enable um, the brands just to remain relevant to the consumers. So we are mobile, we're digital, definitely. And what we do is just to get beyond that. So let's wait for a few seconds. Um, And to inform you that I have my dear grandmother just next to me, so I will maybe interrupted during this session. But aside from that, I should be fine. So let me get back to what I was talking about. So yeah, so for WisePass, what's WisePass? We definitely like a mobile platform, a digital platform. But beyond that, like what we do is really just to help those brands just to build this ongoing relationship with the consumers. Because what we do is just to enable those brands to effectively acquire their consumers on a database and then engage, promote, and reward them. And in the past, we used to be very difficult because like if you wanted to do all this, you would have to build your own thing. And then the relevance of building a consumer product for the brand is actually lacking of sense, I would say, because it's really rare that we see consumers willing just to get a card and actually use it frequently. And then the cost to build the whole entire system would actually be not that interesting. So what we do is to build that system for the brands and actually let them use us so they can do and focus on the branding activities rather than actually building the system itself. So that's what we're all about. And therefore, I like to remind that a lot of people used to understand that we are paid media. We're not. What we are is actually we are owned media. So what happens is the brand basically owns the data. They own the emails. They will acquire those emails through our platform. So in a way, we are second party data, but actually they can actually access their data. So we don't actually control that part. We just enable them just to acquire more effectively the consumers. And that's what we want them to focus. And and whenever like the brands want to reach the consumers, we're not going to charge the brand. So this is not how our business model works. It's based on subscriptions. So what happened is, and earlier I mentioned that, is we really focus on trying to see how brands can acquire consumers, how the brands can actually engage with the consumers, how they can promote to the consumers, how they can reward their consumers, and all at once. So this is actually what we're trying to do. And most importantly, we're trying to build the best consumer product for Vietnam right now, but also like for all the other countries. So this is actually what we're trying to do, because most of the time we see brands trying to grow and then actually they start to do a lot of partnerships and then they do a lot of events. It gets all scattered and it's really hard just to keep proper understanding of what has been done in the past, how they can use the system, or if there is a system, and then it's really difficult. So what we do is to make sure like we remove the complexities out of it, and we make sure like the brands can actually rely on the system. And if you have a brand manager that actually works on growing the brand in a country, and this person happens to leave, and it does happen, then it doesn't matter, because actually the system is still here with all the consumer base, and then the brand is not going to lose all the investment that they've made. So this is why it's really important. So what WisePass is all about is enable brands to acquire, engage, promote, reward with the consumers. And today we are going to focus on how to engage with the consumers. So I'm going to start with a quick definition of what engagement means for us and what kind of branding activity can be done. So for us, activation is all about like how a brand can do something so they can trigger like positive emotions between the brands and the consumers. And I'm gonna have to step a little bit if my grandmother comes. Anyway, and then the question is, how do you do that? And most of those brands, they will do a lot of events. They will do some sponsorship for some concerts, for some soccer games, for some maybe some other things like some marathons, right? So they do a lot of that. So what they do and what they focus on is actually to make sure like their brand will be visible, and then their brand will be behind this event, and people might see or not the brand, and then after that, they hope that the consumers will actually get these positive emotions with them. So this is pretty much like what it's all about. Now, that being said, the problem behind activation is they will face some limitations when they're doing activations, usually. So what they're going to be missing is they're going to go and sponsor some events, which is great. But most of the time, what they do is maybe just to give a pile of cash, or they might give some products, and then they have no idea of actually the activity or the attendance of the event. They don't know who came or how many people came, and if those people that were supposed to come actually really came. So the consumer base is actually insignificant. And I understand that sometimes like the brand will be able just to collect the email, but again, it faces the same issues like before in the past. You don't know if the email will be clean. You will have to use this email to do something after that, but it's going to be complicated. Most of the time, people might use the email just to do a lot of newsletter, but then there won't be any actionable metrics after that. So maybe people will open or click, but then you don't have any valuable insights behind. And then based on those insights, you won't be able to act upon that. So that's one of the biggest problems. The second is actually those events and those investment will be done in a scattered way. So you may see some opportunities just to do this and this and there, and then there's no a cohesive series of events that will be connected with each other where you have a consistent data collection. And that's actually the second problem. And what you want is actually how to make sure that from A to Z, if you have a series of activations, you're still going to be able just to collect the data, process the data, visualize the data, analyze it, of course, and eventually decide on what to do after. So this is necessary, and this is why it's leading to the third problem, where you won't have any actionable metrics to measure exactly what happened during those events. From the first to the end, you might do this, you might do that, and then you spend a lot of time to organize it. You spend a lot of time just to figure out like where and what and how and why you do it. But then at the end of the day, you will have like very little metrics just to measure. So I'm going to give you an example. A few years ago, I was actually invited for dinner, and the dinner cost around like $5,000, and that was actually a premium event. We were around maybe like 15 or 20 people. And during the event, what happened is a bunch of people came, but then what I was asking the brand manager or the marketing director at that time was, you spend $5,000. How do you know that people will actually purchase, or actually they will, they're very happy, or how they engage with your brand? And the answer of this person was, well, it's too complicated, right? So what we do is pretty much we get the budget, we have the cash, we spend it, and that's it. Then we move on. Then if there's an impact on sales, we don't know, and we don't know if they're engaged, and we actually don't even know like if those people were really like consumers, but then they were supposed to be like a good fit with the target audience, and this is good enough for them. And that showed, as for me, the limitation for brands just to really reach their objective. Like if they really want to go and reach their objective, like brands wouldn't be able to do so because like they are pretty limited with the tools that they have. And that happens for every market actually. So it's really rare for a brand to have like a really consistent amount of tools that will be connected, that will be enabling them just to have like this genuine relationship with the consumers. So this is my story about the limited capabilities. So when we talk about the next slide, we're gonna have to mention that now we're ready for the workshop. So you guys have the definition, you have my little story, you have the limitation, the capabilities, and all that. So let's start with the workshop. Last month, I talked about the holy grail of marketing is to send the right message to the right audience at the right time, in the right location, or at the right location. So today, we're still going to focus on the right audience. We are going to talk about how just to get those consumers engaged. So now that we talked about activation, consumer engagement, so now the big question is, how can you trigger those positive emotions between your consumer base and your brand? So we're going to get deep in the details right now. So as a reminder, with WisePass, what we have in the system, in the ecosystem, is we have brands, venues, and consumers. So in this case, for brands, what you guys do is you pretty much use WisePass to sponsor and deliver the products to the venues. And each time a consumer redeems a product, WisePass records the transaction on the platform for the brand. And in this case, if we do some activation, we not recording the transaction, but we might record the attendance. So this is what we do. For venues, they benefit from the sponsorship from the brand via WisePass. So pretty much like what the venue does is just to receive the traffic and they monetize and they generate sales thanks to the traffic that we bring. Eventually, for consumers, what they do is actually they subscribe to the plan. We have a different set of plans. We'll talk about this later. And they will go to a venue to redeem a product or a service or access an event. So in this case, what we're going to talk about is how just we create an event. So all the subscribers will actually just come, scan, and get it. And they benefit from the perks from the brand too. And they benefit from the perks the brand allows them to enjoy. Okay, I'll try to make it like shorter sentences next time. All right, let's get on with this. So what we've done at WisePass is to structure and give you some guidelines, some objective, metrics, budget, timeline, activity, and review. So let's say we want to engage those consumers, but now let's go deep down. And we want to engage 500 consumers. And for that, we have 120 bottles we will use to sponsor the event. We will do this over a period of 12 months. And we will have 12 events on premise, meaning we will have them in the venues, which means like the bar, the restaurant, the hotels, the clubs. And what we will really look at is, if you look back here, so we will look at the metric attendance, which means like basically how many people showed up and how many people showed up by scanning the QR code just to enter an access event. So that's actually how we're going to collect the data. Eventually, what we do after that is, of course, every event we will review the amount of the attendance amount, and we'll look at by venue. Because what we realize is when you do an event, the event will be more or less successful as well with the location. So if you have a good location, then the location sale will increase the amount of attendees. So the second is after that you've set those main guidelines, you have to get to the sub guidelines. and then you'll look at in your brand, like which product line you'll be interested just to pick and promote for the event. What's the pricing you're gonna put for the event? As a reminder, for WisePass, we have different plans, and then all the subscribers, we have like a set amount of pass per day. So we start from 3 pass per day to all the way up to 50 pass per day. So imagine that you want to actually give a really large and broad access to WisePass subscribers. Then you'll maybe use 1 pass per day, 1 pass for the access to the event. Or if you want to actually make it more premium and restricted, because like the access to those events should be a bit higher because like the products you're going to give out is really valuable, then you should put it maybe like to like 10, 15, 20 pass per day. So that will restrict the pool, so you won't have that many people to join the event. So depending on your objective, if you want to get like a large amount of consumers and engage them, then maybe you should actually price a little bit lower. If you want to actually set it as a premium event where you're going to spend a lot, but then you want to make sure like it has to be at that level, then your pricing should be higher. Third, quantity. So the quantity should be pretty much like how many bottles you will allocate for the event. So in our case, I believe we have 120 bottles for the whole campaign for 12 months. So I believe we're going to have 10 bottles per event. Venues. Basically, you have to look at how many locations you want to run the event. So if you do 12 events, so usually you can do like 12 different venues, or you can actually just choose the same venue. So depending on your objective, you just try. So here's an example of how it looks like. So let's assume that the brand manager is from the whiskey brand Chivas, and then the SKU will be Chivas 18 years old, maybe blue signature because we're in Vietnam, and there's going to be 10 bottles per event. And then in this case, the brand manager will actually price it for 5 packs. It could be higher, it could be lower, but this is up to the brand to decide how many packs you want to actually price the event. And then there's going to be 12 different venues for this kind of engagement activity. But now, what I was asked is, yeah, well, you can do events and everyone can do that, right? But then the next question is, it's not about just creating an event. It's not just about like just putting and filling out those information. It's about you start with those consumers you engage with. Let's say 500 out of 1,000. So 50% of your consumer base will be engaged. And let's say you want to get to a different type of event. And that's actually showing the capabilities of WisePass. So you want to build 100 hardcore consumers. So let's say you get 1,000 consumers, whiskey consumers. Great. You want to get those 500 people, so 500 consumers, to be engaged with your events. So the way we count is pretty simple. We look at the user ID, and then if you get 500 user IDs, then you reach your goal over the period of 12 months. But now you want to be looking at a very specific type of engaged consumers, and we call them here the 100 hardcore consumers. And how do we measure that? We measure that really simply. They attend all your event. So what you want is actually people who always show up, and they're very valuable because they may become your brand advocates. They may actually end up buying from you all the time. They may consume it at home. They may buy it for gifting. They're basically just like people that will go out and actually push your brand out. So in this case, there's a subsequent event that will be unlocked, and those subsequent events will be for only 100 hardcore consumers, and we call them challenge. And the challenge is, if you attend all our events, so in this case, I would say, so you have 12. So you have like special events for them. And then you have another actually 100 bottles where you will give them, okay, here, this special event that you only can access. And then this event now is actually not an event that any WisePass subscriber can actually access. There are events that are only accessible if they do something else. So now you can see that you're now creating an event that is based on past activities from the consumers. And that's powerful because now you can say, okay, only the consumers that attended all my event can access that one because they're going to get some really good product. They're going to really get a great event because we're going to do something special for them because we want to trigger positive emotions between us, the brand, and the consumers. And in this case, we structure that with 100 bottles, 6 events on premise again, and that's going to last for 6 months. So that might be like this. It could be a different structure. Maybe it could be like one event that's going to be very good if you want to put a really big event that people will remember for the rest of their lives. That depends on your budget. So again, this is up to you. But the point is, if a lot of consumers have actually attended the event, and you can get like 100 of them, and then they can actually be rewarded with a special event only if they did that, then you can do it now as a brand because we build the tools for you. In this case, what I've done is very simple. This event is going to be an event where you get some whiskey, which is going to be 25 years old. It's going to be even more valuable. And people that will understand that will be really appreciated. So people that will join the event will actually have just to join because like they've been chosen as a special guest, and then they will receive like a bottle as a gift, and then might be done within like 6 locations. So it can be done differently again. So I've done that. So it's really simple. But again, you can decide on how to structure your campaigns, your objective, the pricing, the locations, the SKUs, and there are so many variables. Like we made it so it's flexible enough for the brand manager. So here you could see that I talked a lot about the attendance because now with WisePass, you will be able to really know how many people join the event, how many people scan and just access the event, because we let people in only if they come, scan, and that's how they get in. If they don't actually have WisePass, they can't come. We discuss about the engagement level, which is how do they actually engage with your brand? Are they really engaged or not so engaged? Well, we know that because like we look at the amount of times they join the event, and this is why we can look at hardcore consumers. Segment. We are able to do some segmentation because we can use a bell curve and actually look at the distribution of your consumers and see the engagement level by group. So we can see people that join only once, or people that join like 12 times, or the people in the middle like 6 times. So we'll look at the percentage. And we can look at the impact. And by impact, we mean how much did you invest, and then how many people you managed just to get to attend the event. And those are like 4 questions that you can answer to in the future when you want to measure the effectiveness of your activation campaigns. So how many people came, how many times, who's really engaged, what's the engagement cost? So that's pretty much like the value we bring with the data we collect at WisePass. And we process it, but we let you visualize it, and then we let you analyze, and then let you make a decision on what to do next. So that's actually the biggest value creation that we are bringing with our platform. So the key takeaway, if we have just to make it simple, is for today is we let you understand like how you can engage and grow consistently your consumer base. And the reason why it's very important is because like you will see that all the stuff that you might have done in the past was actually maybe more scattered. You didn't have data collection, and then it wasn't actually cohesive enough. We actually solving those problems for you as a brand. And the next step is, in the future, like let's say you have actually built your consumer base, you have done some engagement activities, but now the next step is, well, how actually I incentivize my consumers on WisePass so they can go to the bar and buy, because like we just don't want to be only a marketing. We just don't want to actually get like a spend money only. How to get a return, a proper return on that. So we will actually address that next month and discuss on that matter. But now I can answer one question that I received. And then the question is, I don't want to depend from your existing base and grow my own. How can I do it? Well, or can I do it, I would say. And then I would say that my answer is actually, if you can build your own database and actually not depend on our subscriber base because you think it's too small, or then it doesn't matter, or it's not a fit. Basically, I have a short answer is actually, can you do it? And the short answer is yes. So what we do is actually to let brands subscribe to WisePass so they can acquire like a large amount of pass, and then they can actually use it just to assign it to some specific users with their own marketing campaigns. So we understood the request that brands want to control more, and then they want to be able to do everything by themselves and not rely on us that much. So we are okay with that, and then we let the brand just like to control more of the platform. So basically, the brands can just like buy a large amount of pass, and then we just set some amount, and then based on the amount that the brand will purchase, then they will just pay that. So if you want to know more about that, you can just like go on our Facebook page and actually contact us. As we are actually working on that with some other brands, we can let you know more on how to do that, how to start, and actually eventually just to get the pass and then do everything yourself. So you have full control over your campaigns. So that's it for today. And I hope that you had a pretty good time to listen to the second webinar of WisePass about digital transformation. If you have any questions, you can feel free to go on our YouTube page where we just upload the videos, on our Facebook page as well, which we just make it very simple. We will also make sure that you can access the slides again. If you want to just get access to the slide, we make them available. And if you have any questions, feel free. You can just use it through Eventbrite. And that's pretty much it. Thank you very much, and have a really good day.